Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm just going to go over my January reads. I ended up completing 7 books, surprisingly, for the first month of 2021. If you haven't already been informed, I've actually not picked up a book of my choice since maybe even freshman year of college, and I am now a senior onto my final semester, which is weird during a pandemic. I already know my graduation is going to be completely online, which sucks, but on to the next. Yes, so I will start off first with Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is the 4th book of Julia Quinn's series for Bridgerton. And initially, I was even drawn to historical romances because of the show of the same name, Bridgerton. And it was recommended to me by a really close friend of mine. After watching it, I knew I had to look more into the characters of Colin and Penelope because they were hinting at their relationship, and I knew there had to be something on them. And what do you know? They got a whole book dedicated to their relationship. It's more of an acquaintance to lovers type of story. Penelope is short and pudgy, not conventionally pretty in their society, but just really enjoyable, which in my opinion, like the way her character was described in the book, I thought at times it was kind of insulting, but also maybe she was just misunderstood. She's just different, and she's not your conventional skinny, tall woman. She was short and stout, but very pretty, as I think the actress is as well. She's a cute little Irish girl. But yes, if you've checked out her Instagram, really great. I unfortunately can't pronounce her full name, so I'm not going to attempt. But anyways, after listening to Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I didn't realize how much I needed that type of story in my life. It was so romantic, and it just sometimes it was just unexpected what Colin would do for Penelope. And even when he would get mad sometimes, but not at her, more so at, I think, at himself, but he was taking it out on her a little bit. But I wasn't mad at him for it because I knew he had good intentions. The entire time for Penelope, he has good intentions. And when the secret's revealed, who Penelope really is, if you watch the series, you know what I'm talking about. If you read the books, you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, I'm not going to spoil that for you. But Penelope has a secret, and when it's revealed, or when Colin finds out about this, he just has this kind of protective yet jealous type of response to it, and it's understandable. It's fair, in my opinion, because as a man, as the third son, he feels there's pressure to being or mounting to something more than he is. And here he has Penelope, not just a young woman in society, but a successful young woman of society who's able to do what she enjoys, whereas he still didn't know what he wanted, or he kind of knew, but he didn't have that type of courage to start. And Penelope helps him get through that. So yes, 5 out of 5 stars. Beautiful, beautiful couple. I can't wait until they have their season, hoping they make it to 4 seasons so we can see them. I would prefer all 8 books to be turned into the series, but we'll see how they do, because Netflix has never had, and not that I've noticed, they haven't had a series that lasted 8 seasons. The longest one was probably 4 seasons for Sabrina show. And even Anne with an E, that was only 3 seasons. Stranger Things, their 4th season's about to come out. So, from what I understand, that's the longest running original Netflix show. Correct me if I'm wrong. But after the Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, I read Eloisa James The Ugly Duchess, and this is the 3rd book in her fairy tale series. Each book tackles a fairy tale that's well known. This obviously implies the ugly duckling. And our heroine is Theodora, but she goes by Theo. And she is not conventionally pretty either. Um, often described to have manly features, manly facial features, but obviously the body of a young woman, not fully grown into her own yet. And James is her best friend from childhood. They were kind of raised as siblings, but they're not actually related. Her father had passed away when she was young, so her mother and herself were taken in by James' family. And initially, James and Theo end up together because there's some financial issues on James' side of the family. And he's kind of pushed into Theo, but Theo doesn't know this is the reason. She thinks it's just because he loves her, but in fact, it all started because of the financial issues. But he always had feelings for her. He just never considered the romance until it was happening, and then he did start to truly fall for her. But unfortunately, Theo does learn about the financial issue and the reason they got together in the first place. So she starts to question if his love was real for her, and she feels the betrayal. So they fall apart. Their literal 2 days of honeymoon phase end abruptly when it's revealed to her. So James goes off to sail. It's something he always wanted to do, to travel and see the world. And since he can't be home for his Duchess, and he knows that she doesn't, or he feels she doesn't want to see him, he goes off on his own and becomes eventually a pirateer. And he's the type of person to fight for the greater good, and he is able to make his own profit out of that as well because he's doing it successfully and legally. Excuse me. But while he's away, Theo is making her own way of the world. She gets an entire new wardrobe, which I thought was kind of momentous to be able to express yourself in what you wear. She had been forced to wear this type of light clothing, but then throughout the story, you start to hear more about her um, getting more color and incorporating that into her life. Which is kind of backwards because her attitude toward everything, although she was really successful, she never attempted to see other people or date or move on because she had always been missing James. And James somewhat had that same situation, but he did kind of at times uh, find other women to be with, but he said he would always miss her. So I don't know. That's kind of sus to me. I don't initially believe that for people to end up doing something thinking about somebody else. I just don't agree with that. But when he returns, there is a time when the society that they're in judges his looks, and he's described as a savage. I wasn't here for that either. So initially, I ended up giving this 4 stars because of that. That took off a whole star for me, describing him as savage just because of his dark complexion, and he was described as more brutish and muscular, not the typical Englishman. And Theo, although she understands that he's back because he had changed so much, she is taken aback and wonders if the man that she fell in love with is still there, and or did he change internally as much as he did externally? Did he change his personality just as he did his appearance? He even got a face tattoo of a flower on his face, which was alluding to the pirate life. Um, but yes, of course they end up together because this is a romance story. I appreciated their evolution, but again, because of the savage comments, I knocked it down to 4 stars. If it wasn't for that, I would have given it 5 stars. And historical accuracy, okay, they're maybe, but I don't fully agree. Next, I have You Had Me at Ola by Alexis Daria. This story, I'll be honest, I chose it, one, because the author has the same name, two, beautiful cover, and three, titles bilingual. So, and Spanish is considered one of the most sexiest languages in the world, and I very much agree. But this story is about Jasmine um, and Ashton. They are co-stars for a telenovela that they start, and they are meant to be a couple that uh, was apart for a long period of time, and then their love rekindles on the show. So, of course, since they play a couple on television, then they start to have feelings in real life. So Jasmine does come with her own history and her background of being in the spotlight due to an ex relationship with another celebrity, and she was plastered on tabloids. Of course, it wasn't by choice, but it so happened the public followed her a lot, and she came with her own baggage. But of course, Ashton, he happened to not want that type of lifestyle. He didn't want to be in the public's eye because he has his own family to worry about and his own secrets in the closet ish. Not so much that he's ashamed, but because he's just trying to protect his family. If you do read this, you'll understand why. But of course, towards the end, they get together. And not a spoiler, but the cover itself, it is based on the description of their final moment together when they finally realize they want to be with each other. She's wearing this beautiful dress, like it hints at the dress she's wearing, which is red and has the flow off the shoulder look, and he's wearing a blue suit with a white button up. Just really cute story, and I didn't realize how much smutty scenes this would be, and whew, I was taken aback by some of the language used to describe certain body parts. But all in all, I did give this also 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I have another one of Eloisa James' books, My American Duchess. Here's the step back. And as the title implies, the heroine of this story, Mary, she is from America. She was previously engaged to several men in the US. However, when they don't follow through, she ends up going to England in search of another husband and to be courted. And this is her final chance to do so. And the book opens up with that, but it so happens our hero, his younger brother, is the one who gets engaged to her, and it was Cedric. Cedric's the younger brother. The story opens up with him proposing to Mary, and of course she accepts, and she thinks she's in love with him. But of course, as the story progresses, they have a fallout. But before that all occurs, shortly after she is engaged, she meets Trent, who is the elder brother of Cedric and who is the Duke. So he meets her and they have this playful banter, and he immediately knows that she is going to be his wife, not knowing she is already engaged to his younger brother. And this was just, I wasn't expecting to laugh as much as I did. They had a lot of playful banter, and my heart ached when Mary was in pain too, because she didn't realize that a lot of the times when men went for her, the only time a man truly seemed to love her was with her first fiance, but his attitude and the way he handled himself, carried himself, she just couldn't live with that type of person. But any person that came after that, including Cedric, they initially wanted to be with her for her money, and she wondered if someone could ever love her for her and not for her wealth. But of course, Trent eventually does. But that's another thing. He didn't think he was capable of love. He thought that they were just really good friends who were fond of each other, although they end up together. And I really enjoyed how they ended up with each other, even though it could be considered controversial a little bit, just because she wasn't aware of who she was getting married to until it happened. Um, Somewhat of a spoiler, sorry. But yes, they end up together, and once they do so, he doesn't think he's capable of fully loving her, but something happens to Mary, and then he realizes, I should have done better when I had the chance. But of course, all ends up well in the world, and they have their happily ever after. So 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely, probably the best book I've read so far of Eloisa James. Like, this is one of 3 books I've read by her, so this is definitely in the running though for the top spot for her. And we'll see how many books of hers I'll get into in the future. But next I have Tessa Dare, first and only book I've read by her. This is a gorgeous step back, and I want to say this is a somewhat retelling of a Beauty and the Beast story. It's the first book in her Girl Meets Duke series. In this story, Emma is our heroine, and she is a seamstress with her own history and own baggage, of course. But when she meets Ash, our Duke, she is confronting him for payment for the wedding dress she is wearing that she made for his ex fiance. Now, when Ash sees her, and he thinks it's convenient because he needs to have an heir, and in order to have a legal heir, he needs to have a wife, and in order to have a wife, he needs to get hitched. So he sees Emma and puts that as a proposal, somewhat, to get married, and she wouldn't have to live a hard life as a seamstress and getting minimum wage or whatnot, or the equivalent, I guess, of minimum wage, but having to work paycheck to paycheck. Instead, she could be a duchess and get married, and not have to work as hard as she had been forced to, even though life has been difficult for her. At first, she, of course, declines the offer, but over time, and over really a period of days, do they get married. And Ash is just so gentle with her, but he also happens to be someone who was severely injured during wartime. Half of his body was disfigured. Even in the cover, it only shows half his body, which was supposed to be untouched. Same thing for the step back. You kind of get more idea in the wedding dress she was wearing. So when they get together, he just knows he wants an heir, and he doesn't think anyone would want to be with him, especially after being dumped or being thought of hideous by his ex fiance. He doesn't think someone could see past his disfigurement. And I appreciated that Emma never saw it as something that took away from him. It was more of a sign of his honor and nobility that he even did that, and he fought for the betterment of their society. And he just had a battle scar. That's all she saw it as, a battle scar, showing that he did something courageous and brave. So she's just very kind in this, and Ash, he again is also kind of reluctant to show his affection for her in public and admit his feelings for her, even when she decides that she wants to do something for someone else who was in a sticky situation. He thinks that she only got with him in order to help the other person out with his money, so he takes offense with that. But of course, he ends up forgiving her, and she explains that she does love him and all that gooey, sappy stuff. Again, playful banter. Tessa Dare, enjoyed this read. Definitely gonna get more of hers. Not sure if I'll get the next one in the series first or if I'll try something else of hers. But I tend to like reading things in order, so I might end up doing that anyway. After that, I have the first book of Eloisa's fairy tale series. Now, this is a retelling of Cinderella. You may have seen this in my thrift books haul because I had purchased the remaining of series of this. Again, this is the first book, and this is about Kate and Gabriel. Gabriel is supposed to be the youngest prince of his siblings, so he doesn't inherit a lot, but he needs to marry for money in order to help his land or I guess his people. He needs money to help his people. Now, Kate, she had parents who had already passed away. Her mother was very frail, so she died when she was very young. And shortly, her father remarried to Mariana, who is her stepmother. But then after that, he also shortly dies and left everything to Mariana and her daughter, Victoria. Victoria isn't the evil stepsister. In fact, she's very kind and very beautiful, but not completely. And she's just not an understanding person. She's kind of clueless. Um, but yes, so it turns out Kate, she is a legitimate child of her father, but Victoria was illegitimate because he had impregnated Mariana's mother because she was the mistress. So he had married his mistress, and that wasn't common. But in order to, provide for Victoria, that's what he did. And Kate thought she didn't have anything, but towards the end of the story, it's revealed that her mother had left her a dowry, which she inherited, and she was well off. And also, she meets her godmother, Henrietta, but goes by Henry. This book was such a slow burn for me. I was only looking forward to when they finally got together and Henry's character, because Henry was very blunt but sassy, and I love that in a character. Whereas Kate would at times get annoying for me. Um, and on top of that, she also is the virgin of their relationship. The fact that she was so comfortable with a lot of things her and Gabriel did, I didn't think that was very accurate, or it didn't feel fluent for this character, for Kate to be so confident. And she's already later in life, considering the time period. She's 23 or 24 at the time that they meet, and Gabriel's the first for her for anything romantic or sensual. And, that just, it felt for the first good chunk of the story, maybe not even the last fourth, did they finally start to um, experience things together and realize their affection. But and because it was a retelling of Cinderella, I was expecting the ball part to the celebration dancing scenes to be depicted in the beginning, whereas in fact, the ball that it's referring to when they finally get together, the kiss at midnight, that's not till the last fourth of the book. So this was, because it was a retelling, I think that's why it hindered my ability to fully appreciate this book, perhaps. But I did end up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because it was just all right. Their smutty scenes were all right. And they're cute ish, but Kate was too confident for me, or not enough. She didn't have enough nervousness for me to think this was realistic character development, if that makes sense. And lastly, my final book, the 7th book I've read this month. I literally finished this today before shooting. I didn't realize it would be such a quick read for me. This did come out a few years ago already, but I bought it when it first came out on paperback and just never read it. I would start but then never finish it. So I finally finished this, and it was actually fairly quick. I was pleasantly surprised by the character of Jade Butler. She is our main character, teenager. She's a junior in high school, and she attends a school that offers her a lot of opportunities. She was able to get a full scholarship, so better education, and she's learning a second language, Spanish. As in each chapter, also features the definition of the word, so if you can kind of see that, we're there as well. But yes, she wants to better herself and have a lot of growth and be able to travel, see the world, give back, not just be someone who is given to, or doesn't want to feel as if people are always trying to treat her like a charity case. she even admits this as a young African American teenager in Portland, Oregon. She doesn't want to feel as if people are always giving her handouts, and handouts that are related to her race. Because she is from this type of area, because she is this race, that they would treat her this way. But definitely get to see her evolve. The chapters are really short, so that perhaps also helps me get through this book. But I did give it 4 out of 5 stars. I probably would have appreciated it more had I read it when I was younger, maybe even when I first bought it. But alas, I just kept putting it off. She does want to study abroad, but in order to do so, she needs to be nominated for the program. And in order to be nominated for the program, she has to maintain a mentorship program. And her mentor is Maxine. Maxine is also a young person of color who had graduated a few years before her, from the same school. And Jade is reluctant to see Maxine as someone who would understand her because she seems to be from another class, but in fact, they end up having a lot of relatable moments, and we definitely get to see their development as friends ish or big sister like relationship, a sibling like relationship, because it's a mentorship. So she's, as the mentor, she's helping Jade and guide her through on her journey through high school and potentially anything after, but we'll see because it's only required for the mentorship program that Jade goes through. Jade also was, her mom was a teen mom. Her parents didn't stay together, but her father is still in her life. But her father is with another woman, and him and her mother just, they aren't romantically together anymore, but they definitely stay involved in Jade's life. Her mom works really hard, and as a teen mom, she wasn't able to go to college, so she continues to remind Jade that there are opportunities she's going to always have to seize. You can't just always wait for them to be provided for you. Sometimes you just need to speak up. And this was a very enjoyable, quick read. Again, it only took a couple days. Honestly, I probably could have finished it in one full day had I committed myself. And I'm not that fast of a reader. I just happened to enjoy this pretty well. Again, 4 out of 5 stars. But yes, and that concludes this video. So again, I have read 7 books, including Mr. Bridgerton, so 7 total. I am just really proud of myself. Again, I haven't read in quite a few years, and I will likely be continuing with my romance genre, but I'm also hoping to expand more with diversity and potentially go into fantasy because I used to enjoy those type of books, or even dystopian. I always enjoyed my school reads. Maybe I'll do a video on the school reads I had, or at least the ones I can remember, because no one can remember every book that was assigned to them. And perhaps I'll even do a video on all the books that I have but have never read. And the next book I'll likely be going with Eloisa James, The Duke Is Mine, which is the second book in her fairy tale series, which is a retelling of The Princess and the Pea. I'm not even familiar with The Princess and the Pea. I know The Princess and the Frog, but Princess and the Pea don't really know, so maybe I'll go in with a clear head with this and just see how I enjoy the story. But yes, thank you for watching, and until next time, bye guys.